Hello and welcome to the first edition of the Combining Excellence podcast, brought to you by RlmS Plant Breeding. My name is Michael Shuldham. I'm the commercial assistant here at RlmS Plant Breeding, and I have the pleasure of presenting the first edition of the podcast, RlmS, a new benchmark against Phoma. Today I've got the help of several experts from commercial, product management and breeding backgrounds. In this episode, we'll be introducing you to who we are and what we do at RlmS Plant Breeding, and to our parent company in Germany, MPZ. We'll look in some detail at the challenges posed by Phoma and how resistance brought through plant breeding is being used to overcome such challenges. Joining me in discussion today, I'm delighted to introduce Chris Guest, the Managing Director of RlmS Plant Breeding, Christian Flachenecker, Winter Oilseed Rape Breeding Lead at MPZ, and Rene Brand, International Rapeseed Product Manager at MPZ. Okay, to begin with, I'd like to bring you in, Chris. You've been working as the Managing Director of LSPB since June last year, before which you were with Gledl, who became ADM Agriculture, as a seed manager for 12 years. Can you explain a little bit about LSPB for us?
Yeah, sure, Michael, thanks, and I'll be delighted to. Firstly, thanks to you for bringing this podcast idea together. So, a brief introduction to RlmS Plant Breeding. We are the UK subsidiary of the family-owned German plant breeding business MPZ, and I think relatively unknown to the UK farmer by brand name. So people know our varieties, but not necessarily the company. And that's something we're certainly looking to change by building our brand identity, if you like. The main crop species that we're involved in are oilseed rape, peas, beans. We also have a number of service operations that we carry out on behalf of third parties. These include a spring barley breeding programme for RGT, and a winter wheat breeding programme on behalf of two international partners, Eckendorf from Germany and Veersen Plant Breeding from the Netherlands. We're a small team operating just outside Cambridge in the village of Impington, and we employ 10 people and cover trial operations of around 50 hectares.
Thanks, Chris. Next guest I'd like to introduce is Christian Flachenecker. He's the main breeder at MPZ. Christian's responsible for a team of 9 breeders working on winter rapeseed. Before moving to MPZ in January 2017, he worked for 10 years at Dow AgroScience as a corn breeder. Christian, would you just introduce yourself to the listeners and explain your role at MPZ?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Michael. I'm also happy to join you at this podcast version and to give you some more information on my background. So I grew up on a small farm in Bavaria. It's in the south of Germany. And very early I developed an interest in plant breeding, starting with potato and wheat breeding during my studies, and then corn breeding also during my first work experience. And finally arrived now at rapeseed breeding here at MPZ. And at MPZ, I'm responsible for the winter oilseed rape breeding program. And that means organizing all the breeding efforts and also aligning the strategy. And the most important job of a breeder for sure is to develop new varieties for the farmers. And since the development of such a variety takes up to 10 years or longer, it's also important to anticipate what the farmer of the future would like to grow.
That's amazing. You were looking at wheat breeding in school. I'd like to know how corn breeding compares to oilseed rape breeding.
Yeah, good question. So in my opinion, oilseed rape breeding is more challenging than corn breeding. So corn is outside in the field during 5 to 6 months during summer, and winter oilseed rape is almost 1 year in the field and has to cope with all the difficulties. So climate, wetness, drought, winter, frost, heat, and then also countless diseases and pests. So it's for sure much more challenging, and that's what I like it to breed at winter oilseed rape, because that's also many points where a breeder could improve the varieties.
Fantastic. And the last guest in my round is Rene Brand, the International Product Manager for Winter Rapeseed at MPZ, and part of the International Product Management of Rapul as well. Rene joined MPZ in spring 2015, before which he gained sales experience at Monsanto de Kalb. Today he's going to share with us his experiences from other big rapeseed countries. Rene, it's great to have you on our podcast. Please can you let us know some expectations for rapeseed in 2021?
Michael, thanks a lot for the question, and It's a great pleasure to participate on your first edition of this new approach podcast for LSPB. Yeah, Rapeseed 2021 looks definitely much more promising in comparison to the last years. We have a very high share of well-developed rapeseed outside in the European countries. We do every year in the autumn time our internal surveys and contact our colleagues and partners in the different countries and to ask, okay, how's the rapeseed outside shortly before winter? And we got a lot of data and positive data back from all these contacts, and they show us, okay, more than 60% is looking really well or over well developed, so really a powerful development. It's similar like what you see right now also in the UK. So there's definitely a much better base for Harvest 21, and that gives me personally a very good feeling, so that our customers, the rapeseed farmers, they will be able to get higher production in comparison to the disappointing years 2018 or 2019. And so if we keep that in mind on one side and compare that already with the available harvest forecast with the first estimations and put that together, yeah, it's in the same way. So the international market experts somehow make a forecast of close to 18 or 18.2 million tons for next harvest. So that's at least 1 million more than 2020. So it looks good. Rapeseed remain exciting. So I'm looking forward for harvest 2021.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I think looking at our trials and speaking to farmers in the UK, certainly crops looked very well going into winter. If I can move on, Chris, you mentioned in your intro about increasing our brand identity. Can you expand a little bit about what that actually means for us?
Yeah, for sure. Since joining LSPB, we've looked at the sort of positioning of the company and how best to adapt that to take it forward in what is a huge period of change for UK agriculture. So the first thing people will see is a sort of refreshed look. So we have a new logo, a new updated website, and a much higher presence on social media.
Definitely, and we've got these new values of innovation, excellence and transparency, which obviously I know about, but would you briefly expand on those?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, innovation, plant breeding is all about innovation, and that's really important in everything that we do as plant breeders. But really, we are at the forefront of that, but maybe people aren't quite aware. Through our shareholders of MPZ, we've brought the MSL hybrid breeding system to the market, Mendel club root resistance, and now the new Phoma gene resistance that we're going to talk about today of RlmS. And that's just in oilseed rape alone. If you imagine the low Visine convisine also in spring bean breeding. Excellence, this came from our strap line, and it's something that we feel is really, really important. And that's what we're always trying to do. We're always trying to create excellent varieties. And also, you know, from a farmer's perspective, he's always trying to combine excellent crops. And the final one is transparency. Invariably, any variety may have some form of a weakness. However minor that may be, we believe it is really important that we make our customers and our customer's customer, invariably the farmer, aware of those, because it's all about trust in this business and individual relationships. And people need to trust our varieties and trust what we're saying to them.
Okay, so what can we expect in the immediate future from LS Plant Breeding?
Our aims for the short to medium term are just continue on with what we've been doing in the past, bringing innovative varieties to the marketplace as we seek to continue to deliver sort of genetic solutions to the problems that we've got. We know we're going to talk about Phoma today, but also we've got challenges with cabbage stem flea beetle in the UK. So, you know, part of our breeding is looking at aggressive hybrids, both with autumn and, more importantly, we think spring vigour. And one thing that we are definitely doing to achieve that is selecting here in the UK. So we're selecting varieties and hybrid components for varieties in the UK under our conditions. And essentially what that's doing is it's sort of leading to the developments that we're seeing now. So we're developing varieties and bringing them to the market with higher Phoma and light leaf spot resistance. And that's what we're going to see this season with the new addition of Respect and also the candidate variety Fleming into the market.
So it's a really good intro on oilseed rape and what this podcast will really focus on. But if we could briefly touch on pulses, is that the same story there?
Yeah, the selection in the UK again, something important, particularly in winter bean breeding, and that's what we have here. We have a winter bean nursery on site at Cambridge.
Brilliant, it's good to hear, because pulses are obviously very topical at the moment with RlmS discussions and some scepticism about imported soya.
Absolutely, for sure. I mean, pulses are hugely topical at the moment, and really, I think we have an opportunity to capture the imagination of the wider public. What we need to do is promote the wider production and consumption of homegrown protein sources, and that's both for animal and human consumption. And I see that as a major opportunity for the UK farmer in the years to come.
Yeah, good. And maybe we can pick that up as our next podcast. Rene, our listeners won't necessarily all be aware of MPZ and their global activities. Could you just give us a quick overview? And is it correct that you operate right the way from Canada to Australia?
Yeah, Michael, sure. Norddeutsche Pflanzenzucht, how we call MPZ, is a private-owned, medium-sized company, breeding company here in the north of Germany with 2 stations. And we look really with big proud back to our rapeseed breeding history, which already started 1897. So more than 120 years of rapeseed breeding activities. In that time, Hans Lemke, somehow we say our father here of this rapeseed breeding story, he took over the farm of his parents, and he were looking for some improvements for better plants, and not in that moment for to make breeding activities, just he would like to improve his yield on his farm. So he started with some first selections. Yeah, and now, more than 120 years ago, we are a big player in the rapeseed breeding business. Next to that, we do breeding for field beans, for peas and fodder plants. Today, we can say that around 260 people working in NPZ and follow this company philosophy to focus on high quality. That is our absolutely first goal. And based on that, we combine all the steps which are necessary for successful breeding in one hand. So it starts from research developments which are necessary really for better breeding. But then also customer service, logistics, and the seed production. Everything is in one hand here in-house, and that gives us a good opportunity really to improve step by step all the necessary actions. To come back to your question, of course, yes, it's right. We have subsidiaries from Australia, but we have also companies in France, in Denmark, Ukraine, of course in Great Britain as well with LSPB, but also we have activities in Canada. So we have really a global view, and our distribution of the NPZ material is then working in Europe mainly via Rapoul, or then via Southern Union. And when we look to this more interesting and a little bit other market, Russia, then here it is working with other breeders in this German seed alliance. So a big company with a broad network, and looking always for the customized solution in the market.
Yeah, so we're really part of a global family and a family-owned company. If I could sort of get on topic with today's podcast, we've mentioned through innovation that some new hybrid varieties with this RlmS resistance against Phoma will come into the UK market for plantings this year. Before we go into detail on the actual resistance, I just wanted to give a bit of background to what Phoma stem canker is and why it's so important. So it's a fungal pathogen that affects the leaves and stems of oilseed rape. It's got the main yield loss variant is Leptosphaeria maculans, and it's been estimated that can cost the UK farmer around 100 million every season. So, Chris, would you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's certainly something that shouldn't be overlooked when people are looking at varietal selection. I mean, Phoma is a major disease in oilseed rape that we've had in the UK for many years, particularly in sort of what we would call the central and southern part of the east-west region. So variety selection, really important. You've already mentioned that the estimated value cost and just sort of bring that closer to home, yield losses of between 0.5 and 0.7 of a tonne a hectare with susceptible varieties. So, selecting varieties based on Phoma resistance in those target areas is really important.
Yeah, okay. And we'll go on now to the resistance traits, which are going to be sort of the key to controlling the risks posed by the disease. If I could bring you in, Christian, could you give us just a bit of background to this particular trait, RlmS?
Yes, so many years ago at NPZ, the breeders developed a system to infect plants with Phoma under semi-field conditions. And this system was called the Winkelmann test. And with that, we were able to screen for Phoma resistance and also were able to develop germplasm hybrids with the new Phoma resistance RlmS, which is originally derived from turnip rape. And after this development, it still needs some time to get commercial products out of it. And in 2015, we get the first registration in France with a hybrid with RlmS. We still have only had average yield, but since that time we further developed the germplasm. We further reduced the side effects of this introgression from turnip rape, and also increased, for example, the LLS resistance in the germplasm for the UK.
Christian, if I can just jump in with a couple of questions. You mentioned the yield impact when you bring in a new trait such as RlmS, but now in the new hybrids that we're seeing, like Respect, its position on the recommended list, the yield sort of on par with the best varieties. So would you imagine seeing these increase even further under high Phoma pressure?
Yeah, I think so. So as I said at the first step, there's mostly a disadvantage especially when you use genetic resources like turnip rape, what we did, and but during the years and in the last 2 years we had not so much Phoma pressure, neither in the UK nor in Europe. Respect with this new RlmS resistance was able to compete already, and I guess when New Year's or in this year perhaps or next years with more Phoma pressure will come, Respect could even outperform the other varieties.
Yeah, and thanks for that. My second question was that really until now RlmS7 has been the main resistance or major gene resistance that we've used against Phoma, particularly for maculans here in the UK. What are or where are the main differences between RlmS and RlmS7?
Yeah, they are completely different. So RlmS is from a complete different genetic resource, turnip rape, and so it's complete different on a different chromosome, different mechanisms. So they are not comparable to each other. And we tested hybrids with Phoma races which can infect RlmS7 resistant plants, and RlmS was still able to stay resistant and healthy. So it's different.
Christian, if I could take over, we've seen from sort of observations by scientists and what we've heard from farmers, there's a build-up of virulence to Phoma. and Phoma resistance in France as an example. Am I right in saying that the next step for these Phoma resistance management and integrated crop protection would be in RlmS?
Yes, so you're right. There's only a few major resistances available against Phoma, or at least currently in commercial hybrids. And so that gives a high pressure to the disease to find ways to still infect those. And just recent numbers from France I get a few weeks ago showed that they tested in several locations in France, and almost 80% of the locations the RlmS resistance was already affected and could not stand the disease anymore. But at the same time, they tested the RlmS, and it was still 100% efficient. So it's very important to have these new resistances when the old ones are overcome.
So how long does it take to come up with a new resistance like that?
So as I mentioned, already breeding a new variety takes 10 years or more. And when you think of getting from turnip rape, completely different crop, something in, that takes at least another 10 years. So to develop such a RlmS resistant hybrid is 20 years or more. So a long time where you have to foresee that you will need this trait in 20 years and then you start.
Well, I'm just going to break up the discussion for a minute with a quick rapeseed quiz to see how much our listeners and you guys know about the rapeseed market in the UK. So I've got 5 quick questions. Is that all right with you guys in Germany?
Let's do it.
Okay, if you're ready. Question 1. How big is the share of the UK rapeseed production against European production as a percentage?
You first or me first?
If you want, please.
My guess is 8%.
Okay, Rene?
I think that's a little bit too much. I think if I'm right, it was not sure that close to 1 million somehow last year. So I say 6-7%.
Okay. We'll release the answers on our social media platforms next week after this has been released. So I'll carry on with the questions. Number 2, I'll start with if Rene answers first and then Christian. How big is the area of winter rapeseed as a percentage of the total arable area in the UK?
It's somehow 300,000 and a little bit, from a little bit then more than 5 million. I'm not so great in calculating with the head, so it's Friday afternoon already. Oh my goodness. 3%, 4%.
Christian?
All right, so I would like to say 8%, but that's probably too much, so I go with 5.5%.
Okay, question number 3. Is the UK 5-year average rapeseed yield higher or lower than that in the EU 27?
Yeah, knowing all the issues you have with flea beetle during the last few years, I would guess probably perhaps lower, but then thinking again to all the drought issues in Eastern Europe especially, Europe probably still better. So my guess is no, it's higher in UK than the average of Europe.
Yeah, I agree. And interesting fact is when you take that up to 10 years, I've seen that a few days ago. I think then you were one of the leading countries, so 10 years ago. So you really had a lot of challenge in the last year. But yes, I agree with Christian. It's higher than the European average.
Okay. Question 4. How many varieties were promoted last season in the UK? More or less than 30?
It's now my turn. I think it's more than 30.
Yes, same to me. So looking at the big efforts the breeders do in the last few years and new resistances, there were many hybrids on the list, so I also think more than 30.
Yeah. Okay, and the final question, if Christian answers and then Rene, what percentage of the UK rapeseed area do you think grows hybrids?
So for sure, NPZ as being a 100% hybrid breeder, I would love to have 100%, but unfortunately in the UK it's not the case, I know. So hopefully more and more, and we see also with the flea beetle tolerance that the hybrids are really better in that phase, so it will be coming 100% hopefully soon, but for the moment my guess is 85.
Then you are really optimistic. I think it's is it close to 60 somehow?
Oh, some work to do.
Yeah.
Well done, guys. And as I say, we'll post the answers on our social media platforms, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook next week. So we've heard a lot about the Phoma and new RlmS resistance. I guess people will be curious as to what they can expect from the varieties. If Chris, I could hand over to you. Where do you think the most benefit will come from for our UK farmers?
Yeah, I mean, I think firstly from our side, it's great to have a sort of standard hybrid back at the top end of the recommended list. You know, people would know our club root material, which has been in the market for some years. But our last variety of sort of standard hybrid was Wembley, and it's tailored off over the last few years. Now, the reason that it was popular on farm was consistency. And I think that's one thing that we can really see coming forward with Respect and the other hybrids with the RlmS trait within them. And one of the most important parts of that is sort of the robust agronomic package that comes alongside both the RlmS trait, but also the sort of combination of components made up for the hybrid. So with Respect, we've also got excellent agronomics, not just, you know, leading Phoma resistance, but also really good light leaf spot scores and really good stem characteristics, so particularly strong on lodging resistance and stem stiffness scores. But the other thing that we see with RlmS, and I think Rene might pick up on this a little bit later on in terms of plant health that they've seen in other countries, but we really have this sort of stay green in the stem with this RlmS trait. And that sort of is promoting, you know, really healthy plants and keeping those plants more robust in terms of then secondary attack from other fungal pathogens such as Sclerotinia, Verticillium, and the other real sort of knock-on benefit of the stay green is that those plants are obviously nice and healthy and therefore able to take up nutrients for a longer period of time, which is all going to help to build towards higher yields.
Yeah, so Phoma resistance, or RlmS in this case, sort of helping that consistency, and I know you mentioned consistent performance in our varieties there. So Christian, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, so if I may add, so besides the stability, just due to the very healthy disease-resistant package Respect has, it also, the component lines of Respect are in 20 other hybrids which are currently in European registration or already registered. And all these hybrids have quite good results across Europe, so that underlines the stability of this genetics.
And Rene, how does that compare with other key areas like Germany, France and Poland? Sort of how successful has the introduction of RlmS been over there?
Yeah, Michael, Christian already mentioned that a little bit. This RlmS story is it's not really now a young story. So we see here already some few years of development, and me personally, I came in touch with this genetic first time when we introduced the variety Kicker into the Polish and Czech market. That was somehow in 2017, 2018 when we started here with the first introduction. And Christian also mentioned the first step. There was still some some issues regarding the yield level. So that was it was really attractive at that moment, but it was not really like what farmers would love to see right at the beginning. So with an outstanding yield level, no. But interesting fact was that this new genetic based on this RlmS set up immediately a new benchmark for controlling Phoma on one side, but also on the other side for plant health in general. And an interesting fact for our audience is the SPZO, which is an association in Czech Republic for rapeseed farmers. They established a new plant health index. So that is something how a new approach to combine here the scoring for Phoma, Sclerotinia, also verticillium. So also in this type way of late coming diseases in the vegetation. And this first variety from our side here, where I was then responsible, Kicker really jumped immediately here to the first place regarding this plant health. Based on this, on the efforts from our breeding department, new varieties came, and there was definitely clearly visible yield progress. And now we have new varieties like Aquila, which can convince not only in this topic of plant health or controlling Phoma, they also convince in the yield potential, and that is now really an attractive combination for the farmers. And last point, which underline here the success of this genetic, our colleagues in these countries, Poland and Czech Republic, they recommend this genetic especially for farmers who look for a solution in tight crop rotation. So where we really have a bigger risk of late coming diseases like verticillium, for example, then they really recommend that here as an attractive solution.
Yes, that generally healthier plant. And it's interesting to sort of hear the path of the disease resistance all the way through from the first varieties and then combining to improve yield and make the whole package stronger. For farmers listening, thinking they've got a working fungicide problem, why do they necessarily need this? Are these hybrids a step forward? Christian, if I could point that at you.
So what we already see is since a few years is the climate change, and that means we get warmer temperatures and also wetter winters, like you experience right now in the UK and also here in Germany. And warm, wet, this is perfect for fungal diseases. So I would expect that fungal diseases will increase. At the same time, we see the political will to reduce seed treatments and also reduce spraying. And that means, yes, I'm sure that farmers will need resistances in varieties. This is exactly the one solution for the future, not only as a breeder, but I think we need to go for.
I think I'd agree with that. And Rene, do you have anything to add on that one?
The near future, and here especially for such an intensive crop like rapeseed, definitely remains exciting. Christian mentioned already there is an increasing influence by politics, but I would like to add also it's not just the politics side, there's also an increasing influence from the society. There is influence coming from market, global market, definitely is a topic for rapeseed. And climate change, already mentioned a few times. So when we put that in a package, then we see here it's a combination of factors which bring this rapeseed business and the rapeseed production in a new challenge for the next years. And just to mention one point, Green Deal was a quite big topic in our business just a few months ago. And it says clear that okay, we have to reduce here our intensity. So that is on one side, okay, pesticides, where we see a clear wish to us to reduce here really with a big step down, and then but also on the other side is fertilization. So that will definitely change our production. So if we keep that in our mind, especially for the farmers, they this old way of producing rapeseed, of course, that is done. So we need adaptations. We have to look forward, and we have to look that we find new alternatives in our production. And on top, just to add that, we lose fungicides, so we lose products, registrations, and they were not prolonged anymore. So that's another point which make it really uncertain for the farmers, and that that is definitely not what farmers need. They need stable productions, really, to somehow to develop the farm for the next generation maybe. And so a lot of challenges, and here is then definitely breeding the right answer. So breeders can develop here new solutions like this disease resistance RlmS, really to give here more robustness to the material, to the varieties for this different challenge. And somehow, okay, not maybe to reach the 5 or 6 tons, but to reach 3.5 to 4, in stable production and with a stable forecast.
Yeah, and you mentioned climate change there. Obviously, the last few years for farmers here in the UK, between the climate change factors, diseases and pests, we've seen a very challenging couple of years. So I'll start to try and wind up the discussion a bit, but Chris, if I could point to you, do you see a more positive forecast for rapeseed in the near future?
Well, I think the straight answer is yes. I think from talking to our sort of customers who are talking with their farmer clients and talking to my farming friends and contacts, generally, Aussie Rape had a pretty good establishment period last autumn. So I think, providing the crop has a good run into harvest, I think we can be optimistic for an increased acreage for sort of 21-22.
You want to put a number on that one?
It's the old crystal ball moment. I don't know. I think from what we've heard so far, and sort of anecdotal discussions, I'm hopeful that we get up towards around 400,000 hectare mark. If you said to me, okay, give us a range, let's say 380 to 400,000, something in that sort of area, and I think that's bringing rapeseed back towards where it should be, but in a sustainable way.
Yeah, we sort of talk about that 500,000 level as maybe where we are sustainable. I'll just give a quick summary of what we've talked about. Phoma definitely being one of the main challenges for the UK market because of those potential yield losses, and particularly in the east and west regions. Based on developments in the last few years, we've seen a clear trend for reducing fertiliser and pesticide use by farmers and by policymakers as well. So disease resistance and more robust hybrids are going to be the answer to those problems. Resistance traits are very important developments, and in this case RlmS is offering outstanding protection against Phoma, as well as several benefits such as stress tolerance and robustness to stem diseases, and that overall healthier plant giving protection against verticillium and giving growers more confidence in yield consistency. So final point, RlMS as an additional tool in the box against oilseed rape diseases, and along with RlM7 we can sort of support a sustainable disease resistance management. Any final thoughts from you, Chris?
I don't want to preempt what you say to close, Michael, but I mean, really, I suppose thanks firstly to Christian and Rene for their time. It's great to have them on the podcast and to sort of share some of their knowledge. I mean, I was fascinated to listen to Christian talking about the sort of the development of RlMS as a sort of trait and then getting it into the modern elite varieties. and also to sort of get an overview from Rene in terms of where this sort of where this trait is going in other parts of Europe. So yeah, I think on that side, a big thanks to them. Also, a big thanks to our listeners. We hope that you've enjoyed the podcast, and please do get in touch with us and let us know your feedback, any sort of potential future topic ideas, or just simply where you're listening to us from. Finally, thank you to you, Michael, for keeping us on topic, and it's been a really interesting discussion.
Okay, that leaves me to sort of wrap it up. Thank you all for listening as well. It's been a good thing to do, and hopefully you all enjoyed it. I'll just reiterate, we'll put the answers up for the quiz on our social media platforms, but also, even if you didn't take part in the quiz or don't want to know, we update those regularly with what we're doing and what's going on, so please give them a follow. Hope that you enjoyed this discussion today and maybe learnt something new, and if you wish for further information, don't hesitate to give us a call. Thanks all for taking part, and thank you all for listening.